Welcome to the School Owner Talk podcast, the longest running martial arts school owner podcast in our industry. Join Duane Brumitt and Allie Alberigo as they share expert insights, proven strategies, and the keys to growing your martial arts business. Let's take your school to the next level. And now here's our hosts, Duane and Allie.
Hey everybody, welcome back to School Owner Talk, the podcast where we dive deep into what really makes a martial arts school owner thrive.
And I'm Duane Brumitt.
And I'm Allie Alberigo, as I just said, and today's episode is real. It's a good one. It's something that I love to talk about, but it's really about what most school owners overlook, which is your brand, your actual brand.
Right, and we're not just talking about your logo or your colors. We're talking about the brand that actually breathes, the branding that reflects your values, your cores, and then also your mission.
Yeah, you know what? And I think that every school kind of thinks that they have a brand, right? That they think they know their brand. And you and I, Duane, have done this already. We did a seminar many years ago in Atlantic City, and we asked a group of people what their brand was. And we went around the room and we were quite astonished by what they thought was their brand. So if you ever felt like your school looks great on the outside and, but it doesn't reflect the energy of the inside and, the look and feel, like my good friend JD, he runs all the different stores and he manages Tony Orlando, the singer, and he manages all the stores for Chris Angel. He once took me and said, I want you to see what these stores are like, and see what the world of Chris Angel is like. So he'd stop me right before the store and he'd say, don't go in yet. And then he'd say, okay, step in. And I'd step in. He'd say, now, what do you see and hear and smell and feel and all that other stuff? And it was clear that I was in the universe, the Chris Angel universe, right? So I thought it was incredible.
Yeah, and therefore your culture really permeates is kind of where you're going with that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Really, what is a brand that breathes?
Right. So let's get into it right away. Let's start. Like you want to start off?
Yeah, I would just say, first and foremost, it's not just, design, because you can have great designs, but it's really the identity, the values, and the behavior that all encompasses your school, and everything needs to reflect that culture and it needs to have an emotional feel behind it. So when somebody walks in, it needs to have that feel. Well, first off, do you agree with that?
I totally agree. And it's funny, for the last 2 weeks at breakfast, we've talked about this amongst my 5 friends that all run, either jujitsu, kung fu, or kempo schools. And we talked about what they thought their brands were. It's interesting.
Well, and I will say, let's take a jujitsu school. Their brand is jujitsu. I mean, it really is. There's a culture in jujitsu that kind of matches, I would say, the old world culture of, some of the bigger federations that started a long time ago. I don't know if they have the same culture, but if you can think of like, the Taekwondo and Tang Soo-do, there was this rivalry where, I do Taekwondo. That was your culture. That's who you were. And I do Tang Soo-do. Like, that's your culture. That's who you were. Jiu-jitsu has that same culture now. But you almost can make a brand out of jiu-jitsu because of highly populate, or how popular it is. I'm sorry, my voice is horrible today. But popular it is. So there is a caveat. I understand what you're saying, that, Taekwondo is not your brand. And you're right. There is more to that than just like, so jiu-jitsu is not your brand, but boy, it solidifies a main portion of your brand. Does that make sense?
It does. And let me go one step deeper on that. So let's use the word Brazilian jiu-jitsu because to me, BJJ and Jiu-Jitsu are totally different entities, right, when it comes to culture. So I have a lot of friends that train in BJJ, that are in a BJJ school. I've coached Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools. And I would say, if anything, their culture is more of like a synergy and friendship and a camaraderie amongst competitors, and they are in the same mindset that they're there to train and grapple and learn techniques. It's less about, and it depends on the school, less about dogma and history and culture and tradition, unless it's like a Gracie school of some sort, or a school in that, traditional background. But it's more about going in, rolling, practicing, training, and learning moves and getting better at the art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? So that's the culture. It's like a very, and then not to say something negative, but there are some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools that, they love to party, they smoke pot, they do this stuff before. I was teaching a seminar in Michigan, and I once met a very famous jiu-jitsu guy, and he was there with his students. He happened to be teaching a seminar in the same town as me. And man, like the restaurant reeked of pot, like marijuana. I walked over, I said hello, I introduced myself, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, they were all pretty high, and, you could smell it. It was pouring off the table where they were all sitting. So culturally, these types of different entities sometimes are part of the culture, like that party school, that, mentality, laid back or family or whatever.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I think it's important that you find out who you are, what you're shooting for, all those things. But before we get into that, I think it'd be important to probably talk about some common branding mistakes by schools. You already brought it up, is, you're misconstruing your style with your brand.
Right.
And that would be probably copying others, like copying maybe your instructor or your head of your organization or whatever it is. You got to be careful of that you're not just copying someone without context, because
Right.
without that context, you may be missing the boat.
Yeah.
Does that make
So, but
sense?
totally does. But certain brands are actually the style. So, for example, for me, ninjutsu, a ninja school, the ninja, aura and, history, karate now, like with the Karate Kid, that Mr. Miyagi kind of sensei student relationship, maybe kung fu, like, David Carradine's kung fu, where Master Po and the Shaolin Temple has its own brand, like. But certain styles, even taekwondo, if they're like our friend, Herb Perez, who runs an Olympic taekwondo training center, that's like their brand is taekwondo elite Olympic champions kind of thing. So that's important. But so tell us about some of the things you believe to be mistakes in branding.
Well, again, copying others without that context, maybe some inconsistencies in the front end marketing compared to what's actually happening in the in-class experience. So, we all say we develop discipline and respect and, all those type of things. But, if that's what we're advertising, but it doesn't show the same thing when our potential clients are coming in onto the floor, there's a big disconnect that's happening there. And I will say that one of the big mistakes is not knowing who you are and then marketing that to the clientele that you actually want.
Right.
So, coming up with your demographics. I know for me, when I first started, I was like, yeah, I enjoy teaching kids. It's not that I don't want to teach adults, but I absolutely like teaching kids. And there's an age range even. So for me, it's usually about 6 to about 9. So those 3 years, I feel I can make the biggest impact on those kids in those 3 years. They want to perform. They have physical ability to be able to perform, and they just want your approval, and they can actually interact with you, and you can have a conversation and joke and all those things. So I knew from an early time, number one, that it was kids, but over the years, to me, it became clear that 6 to 9, not that I don't take 5 and 4 and 3 year olds, and not that I don't take 10, 11, 12, 13 and up, but my biggest group is that 6 to 9 group. So anywhere from kindergarten to second grade, third grade pushing, but in kindergarten to second grade for me, that's my target market. And I
Really?
really
So
want,
what age would that be?
like I said, 6 to 9.
9. So I mean, I meant to say like what school, what like grade would that be?
Kindergarten to second grade.
Interesting. So and that's the bulk of your membership?
That is who I enjoy teaching the most. Now, I
Okay.
can't say that's the bulk of my membership because we take the gamut.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But when I'm interacting with schools and doing birthday parties, or like, those are the places that I go. And that's the target market that I want. Now, alongside of that, I really want families involved. But most of my students are single, meaning there's only one person in the family training, not multiple. So I'm not going out and I want the family involved, but I don't necessarily need everybody in the whole family training together. Because what I found in the past is when one wants to quit, well, usually the whole family quits.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to lose one student than it is to lose three,
Right.
let's say.
Of course. So
So
then
not that I don't take them, not that I don't take them. So, but I have a
yeah.
family atmosphere. Ages 6 to 9 is my target market, and a two-parent family is more ideal for me.
So would you say like if I were to try to put a finger on or a point on your brand would be more of a family-based martial art training center. But what does that really mean? Like I was trying to say, like, today to one of my clients, I was talking to him. I'm like, look, my school's a ninjutsu school. We talk about it. I trained with one of two ninja masters in the entire world. I go through the whole entire thing, blah, blah, blah. I trained in Japan, yada, yada, yada. And I bet you there are people that are hearing that and going like, so what? And what does that matter? Like, so in your school, like how, and we could talk about this a little bit more later on in the podcast, but how do we really tie that like brand in? Like, you go to a pizza parlor, it's an Italian food pizza parlor. You're not going to get sushi. You're not going to get a burger. It's an Italian restaurant, right? Like, so you walk in, the feel, the look, the colors, the menu, the table settings, all of that kind of incorporates all of the brand of an Italian restaurant.
Well,
So
and let me say this too. The brand also, when done correctly, helps to pull in the right people and helps to propel the wrong people.
right, love that, and that's important.
Yes, and I'll give you for instance, I was talking with Master POTUS on Friday. He was giving me a review of the week. And like I had told you, he's running the Bradley School right now because Professor Bean is off. They had their third child, and I gave him 6 weeks off.
Right,
And so he said, we have a mom that has a kid on a trial. I think they've only done 2 classes so far, but they saw 2 of our instructors joking around with one of our beginner students. Here's the context, though. Well, let me tell you the story first. So there, the student's waiting for class. One of the instructor walks up and pretends like they're going to kick him and comes, like this far away. And the
yeah,
kid just sits there and they joke and they laugh. And another instructor comes in and does the exact same thing. They joke and they laugh. Well, this mom looked a little angry. And so Master POTUS saw her facial expressions and it says, ma'am, can I ask, is everything okay? And she says, no, it's not okay. Is it okay for your instructors to throw kicks at that kid and bully him?
hmm.
And he said, what do you mean, ma'am? And she proceeded to say what happened. And he said, okay, I can see where you would see it like that. But let me just give you some context. Little Johnny, I'm just not using his name. Little Johnny started with us a year and a half ago in our 5 and 6 year old program, now has graduated out of that and now is in this class. So we have a great relationship with him. And sometimes we joke around with him like that. In fact,
Yeah,
hold on just a second. Johnny, come here. Now this is where it could have went wrong.
yeah,
Johnny, come here. He goes, were the instructors throwing kicks at you? And did it hurt your feelings or were they joking? And he said, yeah, they threw kicks at me. And yeah, we joke like that all the time. He said, okay, thank you. And then he sent him back into class. This lady was still not happy.
Right.
So I told him, I said, look, our part of our brand is we have fun. It's
Right.
serious, like when it needs to be serious, but we joke around because the other thing she brought up is one of my instructors sometimes would like bust a move and dance.
Right.
And but I would do that,
Yeah.
you know, so I just told Mr. POTUS, I said, we probably don't want her to sign up. I said, so please tell your mom, because she's our program director. I said, please tell your mom that if this lady brings that up in the meeting, then I want your mom to say, I totally understand where you're coming from. This might not be the studio for your child, and that's okay. Here's two other recommendations that you may want to go to.
That's funny. We have this kid he's a good kid. I love him, but he's trouble. Like he's non-verbal, so like he gets frustrated easily, and he's like 4. He'll hit kids. He always tends to go to the trial class, the brand new student, and pick on them, right? Like while the parents trying to think about joining our school, this kid's picking. So we have to kind of always watch that and separate it. But the dad is the hardcore guy, and the mom does, like one of my students, Kim, she'll hit him with the padded sword and joke with him and so on. And the mom cannot stand my girl Kim. So the dad told me, listen, you could, when my wife's here, don't do that stuff. But when I'm here, you could do it all you want. But my wife, she comes home and yells and complains and is upset. And so there's two different perspectives. Isn't it wild to like how you see that? So
Yeah.
here's another thing. So I think one of the other common branding mistakes is inconsistencies between the front end, the front desk, the lobby, the look and feel, the exterior of your school, and the marketing of how they talk about like what they're selling. This is what we're all about. This is the program that we do. This is how we change your kid's life. We'll turn them from a shy kid into this and that. And then the actual class experience, if that is selling, if that's reinforcing our talk, like, what do they say? All hat, no cattle. You wear the hat, you have the look and feel of a big rancher, but you have no cattle, right? Like that kind of feel. So you got to be careful that your school isn't incongruent and inconsistent.
No, totally agree. And what the other thing too is like what makes your brand authentic.
Right.
Like that's you have to be. So okay, I'm just going to take you in the beginning. In the beginning, the reason you started your school is because you wanted students to practice on.
Exactly. People that I could beat up and train with, right? That I, not beat up, but work out with. And
Right. But there was no bones about it. I mean, that's what you were doing.
yeah.
No,
No,
I mean, it's not like you
definitely.
sat down and said, hey, just so you know, you're going to be my Uki and it's not going to
Yeah.
feel good
Right. Right.
until you can, outbest me or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not like you sat
Exactly.
down and said that. But the feel on the floor, the way the training happened, the conversations that were going on, the way that you scolded your students when you needed to scold them
Right.
came from that type of authenticity.
Mm.
So, your personal story, your philosophy, the way that your instructors behave, your physical space inside of your school, the energy that's there, it all has to be congruent to what it
Yeah.
is that you're saying you want to have happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first started coaching, we're talking like 25 years ago, I worked for Member Solutions, and I was their head coach, right? And then I would do these things where people would send me pictures of their school. I mean, from the outside to the entrance to the lobby to the desk where they sat and did their sales to the training floor to the bathrooms. And I would do a review based on the pictures and tell them what I saw. Like it was very cool because it was a picture snapshot of that school. So like it wasn't, I used to say to them, do not go in, do not clean up, do not reorganize, do not change anything. And I did that for many years. I actually have a lot of them still on hand. And you would be surprised at what, and by the way, I watch Bar Rescue and Kitchen Nightmares, and it's the same thing with those shows too, where an owner doesn't see, after a while, you just don't see these things, right? You know, there's a pile of garbage in the corner of the room, but you just don't see it anymore, even though you've seen it and you actually see it, but it's not on your radar, or mold or dust or whatever. Like, so you don't really notice that stuff anymore. And that was interesting when I would do that, to see what people had and what their brand looked like, what their school looked like, and what I would see if I was a potential client walking in. Like, I had a friend who owned a school, and his school was like a storefront, and you'd look in the window, and then it was his desk facing back towards the window, and then the floor, the training floor. But behind the desk was a garbage pail, and I'd always look through the window, and there'd be like a half-eaten turkey sandwich in the garbage. It was in the garbage, but half hanging out. The garbage was piled up. That's what I would see when I would walk through the door, going like, oh, this is not very clean looking. This is a mess. It's cluttered. It looks like, it hasn't been cleaned in weeks. So that's really what it is. But look, what are we going to talk about with making a martial art brand authentic, right? Like, like what could we do? And number one, people don't realize their brand is their own personal story and philosophy. It's their years of training and what they've developed and how they teach and who they are, more so than what style, right?
Yeah.
Because, my school is ninjutsu, but I coined the phrase of the style of ninjutsu, 21st century ninjutsu. It's, classical martial arts with a modern day twist on it, right? So that's my feel. So what are some of the other things that you think?
Well, no, let's go on with the personal story, because the question is, why did you get in the martial arts in the first place? And then why did you start teaching? And why did you start your own school? Like, if you answer all of those, there's going to be a thread that you're going to find that's going to go through all of those. And that's going to give you your authentic brand, I think.
That becomes your story.
It does. And it becomes your students' story, because
right.
They're going to have their own story, but it's going to be rooted into, what your story was.
Right.
And all of that needs to resonate, and I think, part of your brand too, what you could do is, I've done this before, is go like the Survey Monkey or whatever, and create a survey and ask questions of your current clientele. What was the number one reason that you started your child in martial arts? And you give them,
right.
And then what was, the number two reason, if there was one. Yeah. And then, the third one could be, what is your reason now?
Right.
Because it could change, and then give them a third one, and then just something simple. And then quite honestly, when you take that, like if you want to get the stats, you just copy all that, throw it into Chat GPT, and ask it to break it down for you.
I love Chat GPT. I never, like, what was it, like about 4 months ago, you guys were talking about it on the podcast, and I'm like, what? Chat GBD? Like what? Now I'm like an expert. I use it for everything, Duane. Everything from writing a text message to a email, to a story, to an article, like everything that I could think of, scripts, ideas, and it will literally solve problems for you. It's amazing. But one other thing too, Duane, that's important. With your brand comes your staff, right? And your staff, the way they behave, the way they act, the way they talk, the way they are, has to represent your brand. So for example, I've had some identity crises within my school and certain instructors. Like, so when I owned 6 schools, each head instructor would, promote the school, teach the school. People would fall in love with him and my brand, the ninjutsu brand, but that instructor. So my one location, I had a guy who was like a little bit overweight. He was a bubbly, funny, joking kind of guy. All of his students that he would sign up, especially the adults, looked just like him and acted like him. Bubbly, a little plump, overweight, not in the greatest of shape. Then I had another guy in my other school. He was this shaved head, muscle guy, grappler, loved to fight hardcore. And all of his students, like if I wanted to bring people to a tournament, I'd say to this guy, get your people together, let's bring that group, because they were all tough dudes. And every one of my locations had a mirror of who the instructor was and what they do, right? So it's very important that your staff, if you have a staff and they're running the school for you and you have an idea or a brand, you got to make sure that they're following that brand.
They have to. I mean, it has to be congruent all the way around, from you all the way to the instructors, wholeheartedly.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And then the actual look and feel of the space you're building, right? Like
Well,
what
yeah,
is
and you
that?
brought it up before, hey, you've coached people where their website looks like one thing, but their school looks like
Oh
something totally
yeah.
different.
Yeah, like red, white, and blue stars and stripes, and then they walk in and it's like, a MMA cage and a fight team or a traditional classical. Like I had a lady, she goes, "Oh, I really loved your school on the website, but when I came here and I saw all the wood and all the swords and the weapons," she goes, "I was hoping for a more like, red, white, and blue stars and stripes type school." And even though my website doesn't have that, but that's what she had in her mind, as it.
Yeah.
So
So
wild, right?
as we were talking, because I brought this up, I had done a survey recently and I fed it into Chat GPT, and it was, asking them what their reasons were. So the primary angle or reason, our top choice for, people getting into our program,
Mm-hmm.
44%, it was self-confidence. They wanted their child to have self-confidence.
Interesting.
Next one is focus and discipline. And that was the second question. So the number one was
Yeah.
self-confidence. Second was focus and discipline.
Hmm.
And third was emotional control.
Okay.
So the kids being able to control their emotions. The
Right.
fourth was physical fitness. And then like respect, leadership, social skills, those were like on down the line.
So isn't
But
that wild?
but that allows me to go, okay, that's where, well, one, that's, part of my brand, which is good. But then, from the other standpoint is now how do I communicate that these things are actually happening on the floor and get the parents to see them?
Well, that's interesting because I was looking like and listening to you, and not one of them was self-defense or martial arts. So that martial arts is just a vessel, it's a tool to get people to have the things that a parent would want for their child, like self-confidence, self-discipline, focus, control, anger management, communication skills. However, sometimes parents, like for example, I have a girl in my program and the mom, I'm like, I wish your daughter would compete. Oh, she's a little nervous. I just don't think it's the right thing for her. I said, but ma'am, it's going to make her better at what she does in the martial arts. So you have to like step out of that comfort zone and push her a little. No, I don't want to push her. Like parents take their own inhibitions, right, or fears, and they push it onto their children. They bring them to us asking for us to give them all these things like self-confidence and self-esteem. But how do you get that unless you push boundaries? Like every time they feel like you're pushing them, they retreat, they close up. How do we get them there? I think that's something that we have to put into our brand on how we, through the martial arts, do all the things that you say you do and get people to understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then,
Right?
and that would be where, you're aligning your culture with your brand,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
it
Yep.
really is. And so someone might be asking, how do I know what my brand is? Those type of things. Maybe we should go over, a few of those. And I guess what I would say first off is, you probably need to do some market research inside of your school currently,
Right.
because you're already attracting someone, and they apparently are who you want because they're staying with you. So they're in a line with whatever your brand is, whether you know what it is or not, or whether they know what it is or not, because they're comfortable with you. And so, you could take a look at your age ranges that you have. You could look at, the family situation, if you will, whether it's a one parent and two parent, that type of stuff.
Right.
Um, I think it would be good to survey them what they're, what they were looking for out of a program.
Yeah.
You
You know,
know?
you know what are some good questions? Like you need to, well, I like the fact that looking at what we have that represents our brand, like flyers and threefold flyers or informational packets or the website and all that other stuff that reflect our school and the values, right? But here's three questions that you could ask yourself if you're listening. Write these down, and then you could create your own powerful brand story. Number one is, what is your heritage and lineage, and what is it that you want people to think of when they think of you? So, what is your heritage and your lineage, and what is it that you want people to think of when they think of your school? Like, what, if you could click your finger, everyone in the world would think of this, right? The second thing is your mission. Like, what's your purpose? You're very clear, Duane, that you want to teach, a certain age group of younger children, and your goals is to create, successful, I believe, this is my thought of your school, successful people in society through the martial arts, right? But what is the listeners out there? What is your mission? Like, what do you want? Define your purpose, whether it's self-mastery, discipline, building modern day warriors. Tell your story and create those marketing communication channels. And the third thing is your title and your experience. Like, who are you? Like, why should people follow you? Why do people care who you are? Like, if you're an Olympic Taekwondo champion, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gold medalist, or a classical traditional martial artist, or a full contact fighter, or a street fighter with 100 fights and never lost, like you're a tough guy. Like, so your title and your experience tells your story. Use your credentials. Like for me, I'm an 8-3 black belt in ninjutsu and train in most different martial arts styles, but that's a part of my story. I want to emphasize what I've accomplished so that students could look forward to be learning from me. Like, the lessons are valuable. So what is your title and your experience? Those are three things that I think are pretty important to building your culture and your brand.
Yeah, and I guess when you figure out who you are and what you stand for and why you're there, I think also from that is you do a little research and you pick the colors that represent that.
Yeah, right. And by the way, don't pick colors that happen to be just your favorite color. Like, for example, I've seen schools that were like a disgusting puke kind of green color, because green's their favorite color. But if you go on, it's very simple. Go on Facebook, not Facebook, on Google, and search colors for businesses. And it'll tell you, like, blue represents restaurants, red represents this, yellow represents that. And it'll tell you what colors bring out emotions in people, right? And those emotions could be a turn on or a turn off. So you don't want to have your school painted in a color that's like off-putting to people when they walk in, right? Or have different artifacts like, up, and that kind of thing. Like, whether you love them or you hate them, you wouldn't want, unless you're trying to draw that attention, you wouldn't want a life-size cutout of Donald Trump in the lobby of your school, because you're going to get 50% of the people that hate him and 50% of the people who love him. You're going to isolate. So be careful what your message represents.
Yeah, and I would actually tell you to go to ChatGPT and do that research, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, easy. Again, go there, and within 2 seconds it'll pop out all the colors and what they're for.
Yes.
So cool. So you want to, this is a tough one, Duane. We talk about branding, but we have to, like, I was just talking to one of my clients about, like, we talked this morning at breakfast about teams, right? Like, if you have a favorite baseball team, like you're fans of the New York Yankees, New York Mets, Philadelphia Phillies, whatever the team in baseball or football, right? You would wear their jersey, you'd wear their colors, you would watch the games, you'd go to the games, on, if you could get tickets, you'd have if you're in the Super Bowl, man, that's your life's dream, right? Your team. So, like, how do we create that kind of connection to what people do? Like, who are they? Like, we don't want our students to care more about their football team than they do their martial arts school, because their martial arts school is what they're living and engaging in. So how do we get them to buy more into the t-shirts, the colors of the school, the logo of the school, the special events we do, and so on and so forth. That's a tough one, is to get people connected to the brand, to create that tribal mentality.
Well, but once you understand who you are, and then you create the colors that go along with that. So, like, for instance, I just did Chat GPT and I said, what colors represent self-confidence? Because that was the number one, right? Confidence. Right. It said red, orange, yellow, royal blue, gold, and purple. Well, if you looked at my star logo, what does it have? Red, yellow, and blue.
Right.
Royal blue.
Right.
So, unbeknownst to me, I've already been doing that, like 25, 26 years ago.
Right. Now, if you had, I don't know, I haven't been to your school in a while, but your school, I remember you had, I know you kind of changed the layout of it slightly now, but I remember it was a very big school. You had a sitting area, you had a private office for meetings, you had a regular office for sales or whatever, and the secretaries and program managers. You had one huge training floor, one half huge, not as big as the main one, but a big training floor, bathrooms and locker rooms. It was a beautiful location, very clean, from what I remember. White walls and, gray, I think it was, carpet. Is that good? My memory okay?
Yeah. It's a darker, black and gray.
Yeah. So like your school was, when I walked in, if someone said, what's your impression? My impression would have been very professional, very clean, large space, and that's what the feeling like I would get. Like I'd feel comfortable in there. Like I didn't say, oh man, a few of my friends' schools, and when I visit schools across the country, like wherever I am, I try to stop in. If I see a school, even if I'm driving, I'm like, let me pull over and just see what that is. Or if we're getting, and sometimes the schools are disgusting. Like one time I had a parent, his kid is still with me. He's now like 12 years old, but he was like many years, 6, 7 years ago. He called me during the day. I need to talk to you about the lobby. It's a little warm it's warm in the lobby. I'm like, sir, I get it. The way our air conditioning works, it doesn't always get to the lobby. Plus, when people open the door, they hold it open. All the hot air comes in the summer. All the cold air comes in the winter. I said, but you have to go and check out other schools' lobbies so you get to see. And he got angry. He was nice guy though. Him and I are great now. Like I love him and I love the kid. But at the point there, I was mad. He goes, you want me to go to another school? I go, I don't want you to join another school. I want you, when you're walking around, you happen to see a school, peek in and see what they offer as a lobby. I'm going to warn you, there's going to be lawn chairs, PVC lawn chairs that cost $2.99 at Home Depot on the floor. The lobby's going to be ugly. There's going to be dust all over. In the corner of the room is going to be a bunch of pads thrown in a pile. Like it's just going to look very, very, chaotic. And, so he did. And he came back to me and said, you know what? I understand what you're trying to get me to do. He says, we have a beautiful lobby. Forget about my complaint about it being a little warm. He goes, I apologize that I even talked to you and called you about it now that I realized what you were saying. But look, he had no point of reference.
Yeah.
So he was comparing us to maybe like a Starbucks, because that's what my lobby looks like, a Starbucks cafe almost. Like
it does.
Anyway, long story short, we have to also point out to people that, what our brand is. Sometimes you got to tell people what your brand is so that people understand it.
Nope. I totally agree. And that's a wonderful case study, right? I mean, just by telling them to go and doing that. And nowadays too, when you walk in, does it smell like feet? Like,
right.
Are they able to get the stench out of the air? Which with our ionizer that we use, it's helped dramatically compared to what it smelled like before.
I do have that problem in my school because when you first walk into my lobby, off to the left is a little gymnastic room that I rent out to a lady. And they have those springy, spongy mats and they're bare feet and it's carpet. So when she slides her door open, it's like this smell comes out of it and makes my lobby smell like old socks and feet. my black belt, look, we're martial artists. We're sweating and dripping all over each other and all that. And my head guy is like, Shihan, this is terrible. Like the smell when people first come in. So I'm always burning incense when she's not there. We open her door and we open the windows, like we're trying to air it out. Like it's terrible, right? So there's like, it's hard to control that. But there's only one time for a first impression, right?
Well, if you don't have an ionizer, I would tell you to get one and
Yeah.
have that door open at night. So what we do is we have one of those Amazon Alexa plugs or whatever it's called,
Right. Right.
and it's hooked up to our Alexa, and we've timed it. So at night, we put the ionizer down where it's supposed to go. We plug it into the wall, and at I think at 10 o'clock at night, it turns on, and it runs automatically, and then it'll shut off, I think, at maybe by 10 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Automatically, and then we just unplug it when we come in, but that plug stays in the wall.
Right. That's awesome. So how do we examples of case studies and people schools that get it right? Like we should run a contest on our Facebook page. Maybe, get a sponsor to sponsor a few $100s in gear. I'm going to reach out to Century or like ProWin or my one friend Gary from Eastern Martial Arts Supplies, and then the winner, and everyone could submit photos of their schools, and then we'll put together everyone could vote on the nicest school.
Okay, let's do it.
That'd be pretty cool, right? Let's talk about that, you and I. That's a good idea. But so who gets it right? Like, what do the schools look like? And by the way, I have to say, now compared to 20 years and 15 years ago, most schools that I see are quite gorgeous now. Like kind of everyone with shows like Bar Rescue and Kitchen Nightmares and Motel Hell, like with Gordon Ramsay or whatever it is, Hotel Hell or whatever. People understand branding and the look and feel and colors, and they're making their schools more attractive, right? So the majority of professionalism in schools is getting better and better and better.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I like that. So
and then the other thing, like you can go even as farther when you're talking about colors, is then your uniform colors can be congruent with that as well.
Yeah.
So like I'll just give you an example, and I don't know this to be true. This is my perception, but you look at Stephen Oliver's Mile High Karate and their top program. If you get into their top program, their uniform top is blue. It's a blue. But what does that blue represent? So, remember the infomercials with the guy with the khaki and the blue shirt all the time?
Yeah.
All the time.
Nice.
Blue is very, very calming. It is trustworthy. It is like, there's so many like intelligence, confidence are all with that color blue. So I wonder, I don't know this to be true, but I wonder if Stephen Oliver consciously or unconsciously chose that color. You see what I'm saying?
I'm sure he did. He always thinks things through. I mean, the guy's got an MBA in business, and he's just a genius when it comes to business professionalism and so on. So yeah, listen, if you were to create a distinct visual identity, you definitely should choose colors of the school, the look and feel of the mats, the colors of your uniforms, the colors of your staff. Like I remember Tiger Schulman, and their people all were chiseled bodybuilders in good shape, nice, tight military type haircuts, good looking people. He literally was famous for firing someone for getting fat. And he, they took him to court, and he won in court because he's like, look, I have a brand of staying in shape and people, being in ultimate conditioning and looking good and being neat and clean. And then I have this guy who once was that way and let himself go. And he doesn't represent my brand, right? You got to have people that represent your brand, your team, your staff. Your students don't have to look like that, but your team should look and feel professional and act that way, right? The other thing is too, like, your logo. People don't put a lot of time into their logo. Like, what does their logo represent? How does it look? Is it like yours, the TriStar martial art logo? You mentioned the colors and the picture with the stars and the people, and it's just like it's got a lot of meaning to it.
Yep, exactly. So, closing up real quick, maybe we go over some action steps that school owners can do. We've kind of alluded to some of those things, like said some of those things as we went through, anyways. But what are some 3 action items that people can do?
Okay. I would say number one would be that you have to look at your here's a good thing. Buy those little paper notepads, a small one, and a pen, and hand it to a few different parents and just say, or maybe have a form and ask them the questions like, when you look at our school, what do you see? When you hear about our school, what sticks out in your mind? How would you describe us in 20 words or less, right? And have them walk through the school and say, these are the things that we need to fix. We might not notice it, like there's a scuff on the wall or a chip in the paint or this, or does it look worn? Like, for example, there was I forget the name of the company, but it was a boxing school, cardio boxing, and they would open their franchises, but it had a weathered look. They wanted the look to look like an old gym from like Brooklyn that was worn out for years. So their kick pads, the bags were like weathered, the chairs were like weathered, the pathways in the floor was intentionally brand new, designed to look like people had walked that path over and over again, like it was that old school feel, other than it didn't have the old school smell, I don't think. Right? But you know what I mean? Like, that's part of the brand. So you got to discover, maybe do a questionnaire and ask what people's opinion. You might be quite shocked at how far off you are on what you think your school represents, or you might be like, wow, everyone gets it. I must be doing my job pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good action item.
Cool. What do you think?
Well, I agree with that. I also, like I had said before, doing some sort of survey on, finding out the biggest reasons why somebody started with you and why they're staying with you. So what their number one reason was in the first place, and why they're continuing right now, because those then are going to give you, what it is that's actually happening out on the floor, and then combining all those together. And then I would say, once you do that, then maybe you take a look at your website, to the signage, to your logo, to the floor, and make sure all of that is congruent.
Yeah, I love it. So anyway, I mean, look, I can't believe it's already time, Duane. Like, it goes so darn quick. So I hate to say it, but this kind of wraps up another episode of our School Owner Talk, right? This is it. It's over for the day. Just for the
right. Now this conversation, got you thinking. Then really probably maybe it is time to look in the mirror, take a look at your school. What truly is your brand, and is it aligned with your culture?
Yeah, and remember, branding isn't just about looking good. It's about being being real, being clear, and being you, authentic, right? About who you are, that story.
And look, listeners, thanks for spending time with us. If you have anybody that that could utilize this podcast, please share that with them, and then we'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, I love it, dude. That's great. Hey, guys, also share with your friends, right? Sign up for our iTunes account and follow us on Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, even Spotify. I mean, you can find us. Yeah.
Yeah, and we just got a great. I happen to have? I could quickly read what someone said to us if I could find it real quick. He texted me. Anyway, it was really nice to hear from this guy, and just out of the blue, I received this text message, and it was all about what he gets out of our podcast. But anyway, yeah. Oh, here it is. He said, "Hey, Shihan Alberigo, my name is Master Nate. with I'm not going to mention the school. He's in Ohio. I'd like to start off by saying thank you for providing your contact information for questions regarding podcasts or information on our martial arts school. I'd like to further thank you and Master Brumitt for your podcast, as it has already helped me through the past 2 years of running my school. If you could please pass this message along to Master Brumitt, I would greatly appreciate it. I just wanted to establish communication for the future, and I wanted to thank you for all that you do. Have a great day.
That was wonderful, right?
Yeah, right? Kind of keeps you going, right? So, I hope that other people are getting the same experience.
Right. Have a great day, sir.
Take care. See you soon. Sayonara, everybody.
Now that's a wrap. Another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk is in the vast library. We appreciate you tuning in and being part of this incredible community. A huge thank you to everyone who makes this podcast possible, including our sponsors, such as EliteInsights.com, your go-to high-performing website company for martial arts schools, LeadHunterMedia.com, your expert in digital media and content creation for martial arts schools, AddHealthCoaching.com, helping school owners unlock a powerful revenue stream by providing the tools and framework to become a health coach. Thanks again for joining us. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share our show with other school owners and friends. See you on the next episode.